Shalom, guys. So today I'll be reading from this book. It's my introduction to this book, The Deep Things About God, written by John Pauline, which is an insider's guide to the book of Revelation. It's written by this man who's a Seventh-day Adventist theologian and based his studies on Energy White's teachings, who's our prophet for our denomination. And for this segment, I'll be reading from the introduction. So it's another level from our previous book that I read about meeting Jesus in the book of Revelation. It's more intellectual, it's on high intellectual property. So let me begin reading. Before I begin reading, I'll start off with a word of prayer. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, shalom. Thank you for the blessing you given upon us, you have bestowed upon us. Pray for the Holy Spirit to be present as I preach the word of God through this book, and that I prepare sermons and teachings for my ministry on YouTube, Lord. Pray for the blessings and forgiveness for our sins. In Yeshua Mashiach's name we pray. Amen. So the introduction for this book. You are vacationing on a lovely island. One day you will walk along the edge of a cliff, occasionally stooping to peer over the edge of the waves, crashing against the rocks below. The combination of wind, waves, and noise is exhilarating. Suddenly you stumble upon a very old man sitting on a flat spot near the top of the cliff, a great view of the coastline and the sea. His gaze fixed far out to the sea, he doesn't seem to notice you. What are you looking at, sir? You ask. Are you waiting for a ship to come in? He doesn't answer. Even when you approach closer, still doesn't seem aware of your presence. Although his eyes are upon you, you get the impression that he's not really there with you, that his gaze is not focused on anything you can see. What you're looking at, sir? You inquire again. Again, no response. Standing in front of him, you wave your hand before the man's eyes. Still no reaction. Torn between the shaking the man, calling the police, and sitting down nearby to see what will happen next, you finally decide to take a seat and wait for a while to see what will happen. After a few minutes, the old man takes a deep breath, his eyes focus, and he glances around and sees you. You shift your posture a bit in case you need to get up and run in a hurry, but he smiles in a friendly way and says, I suppose you're wondering what is going on. Cautiously, you nod. Smiling again, he begins. You probably won't believe this, but I just had an encounter with Jesus himself, and he told me all about the future and what the end of the world will be like. I can't wait to share the message with someone. Would you be interested in hearing me out? Would you be interested, or would you put him off just another crank? When it comes to the book of Revelation, what falls for your mind? The number 666, the four horsemen, the battle of Armageddon, the New Jerusalem. The book of Revelation has intrigued people for nearly 2,000 years. It is an ambiguous, strange, and challenging book, and you have been studying Revelation for any time at all. You have noticed that people have strong opinions about it. You also know that those opinions usually don't agree. Someone has suggested that if you find 12 Christians interested in the book of Revelation, they will probably hold at least 13 different views on the book. Since the book of Revelation claims to tell you about the future, however, it still attracts our attention no matter how difficult it may be to understand. To be curious about the future seems to be a basic human drive. We all would like to know what is about to happen in our personal lives, our country, and the world. The problem is that when we open the book of Revelation, the power of our curiosity can cause us to see what we want to see, rather than what is really there. Our passion is to know and can cloud and sway our knowledge. This is those who misread Revelation today are far from the first to do so. The history tells us that the misinterpreting Revelation is now ethically neutral. In the wrong hands, the apocalypse can be dangerous as a terrorist attack. Sober and careful study of the apocalypse is not just a game, it can be a life and death matter. For example, in AD 1534, a group of people studied the book of Revelation. concluded that the city of Matzah, Germany was the New Jerusalem. Many people perished in the battles fought over the city. Others starved to death in the siege that followed. Mistaken ideas about Revelation can be deadly, and not just in the distant past. In 1993, the Branch Davidian standoff in Waco, Texas, seized the attention of a nation. The Davidians at Mount Carmel had sincerely, honestly studied the Book of Revelation, but in the process they developed ideas that caused them to challenge the federal government of the United States in battle, ending up in the loss of nearly 100 lives. Men, women, and even little children found themselves sacrificed on the altar of someone's unique interpretation of the Book of Revelation. Perhaps the wiser course then would be to stay away from this book. After all, why go looking for trouble? I don't think that the answer is either. Revelation is too far influential in today's world to ignore. The language of Revelation from Armageddon to 666 has spread widely through popular culture. The kind of themes addressed in the book are the subject of such influential and popular movies as Terminator, The Lion King, The Matrix, and Independence Day. So whether we like it or not, understanding the Book of Revelation is important in today's world. The best course, therefore, seems to involve learning how to read the book in a way that avoids twin perils of fanaticism and indifference. Charting such a course is the purpose of this book. Encouragement from Ellen White. An author that I've learned to appreciate, Ellen White does not offer a detailed examination of the Book of Revelation, but she saw special value in such study. A number of statements in her writing strongly encouraged me in my examination of this book. She comments, for example, "We do not understand the world as we should. The book of Revelation opens with an injunction to us to understand the instructions that it contains. We do not understand fully the lessons that it teaches, notwithstanding the injunction given to us to search and study it. Even though people have explored for centuries, there is much more we need to learn about this book. The book of Revelation continues to require serious and careful attention." Ellen White goes on to say that when we as people understand what this book means to us, there will be seen among us as great revival. The book of Revelation has the potential to create a great Christian revival. When the book of Daniel and Revelation are better understood, believers will have an entirely different religious experience. What does that mean? They'll be given such glimpses of the open gates of heaven that heart and mind will be impressed with the character they must develop in order to realize the blessedness which is the reward of the pure in heart. The ultimate reason to study Revelation is the strange book offers a glimpse of heaven that you can't get anywhere else. You could say it presents heaven's secret intelligence about ultimate reality. Revelation takes us far beyond what we can see with a telescope. It opens up vistas that we cannot perceive with our eyes and ears. And when we understand the universe from God's perspective, we will have a much clearer picture of how to live successfully in that world that we can see, hear, and touch. Let me share one last sentence from Ellen White. "The Lord will bless all who seek humbly and meekly to understand that which is revealed in the book of Revelation." According to the statement, attitude is everything. If my motivation for studying this book is to be able to show how brilliant I am, or to defend my pet ideas about the universe, I won't get the benefits that come only when I read with a spiritually hungry heart. The farther you progress into your education, the more equipped you find yourself to solve problems and to master riddles. But truly educated people also realize how little they really know. They recognize the incredible variety of options in the process of learning. Although I have put several hours a day for the past 30 years to study of the book, I have learned about all else that I have much more still to discover. A humble and meek approach to revelation is the only sensible attitude to take. Exploring the basic questions. When news reporters investigate a new bestseller, they examine the kind of person who wrote the book, when and where it is written, and how the author came up with the information presented. Such basic basic information is often crucial to understanding the book's goal and its message. The author of Revelation. From what the book itself tells us, the author of Revelation was a man named John. Revelation 1:9. He wrote the Christian churches of Asia Minor, located in the western part of what we call Turkey today. 2,000 years ago, these churches were part of the Roman province of Asia. Verse 11. John seemed to have been some kind of authoritative figure among those congregations. Several interesting features of the book of Revelation may shed some light on the kind of person he was. For one thing, the book contains numerous grammatical flaws in the original language, Greek. The Greek of Revelation reminds scholars of the practice writing of first-century school children. Greek samples of schoolwork exist among the papyrus documents unearthed in Egypt. So when John was probably not a Greek speaker by either birth or training, further evidence suggests that the author probably grew up in Palestine in a Jewish environment. If he had spent most of his life in Palestine, then moved to the Greek-speaking province of Asia, it would explain how the difficulties he seemed to have had with the Greek language. As a second language, it was Greek to him. While the book of Revelation doesn't give us much detail about John, a number of other ancient documents address the issue. Most of them tell us that years before the book's composition, John was one of the 12 disciples that walked with Jesus. He was the brother of James and the son of Zebedee. Jesus called him and his brother sons of thunder, apparently a reference to their loud and combative personalities. Jesus did have a sense of humor. According to such sources, John lived in Jerusalem for 30 years, spent time in Pella across the Jordan, and then settled in Asia Minor some 50 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Tradition then tells us that during the final years of his life, John wrote both the book of Revelation and the fourth gospel, the one that bears his name. Many scholars question, however, whether the author of Revelation could be the same person as John, the disciple of Jesus and the author of the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John and the book of Revelation are quite different. While the grammar of the Gospel is simple, it is correct that the book relates the life of Jesus in a stunning, masterful way. By way of contrast, the book of Revelation uses rough language to tell an apocalyptic story of a strange beast and perplexing symbols. Many scholars look at the stylistic differences and wonder how the same person could have written both books. Other scholars nevertheless look at the two books and say, really, do they have a lot in common? For one thing, both make much of the use of the number 7, if not directly, at least by implication. In the Gospel of John, Jesus performed exactly 7 miracles, no more and no less. In the course of his ministry, and at many points in the book, we observe 7-day periods. The number 7 is 7 more crucial to the book of Revelation, of course. Another common element in the two books is the use of the word testimony or witness to describe fidelity to the gospel and how the evangelial light and darkness represent truth and error. Also, only the books of John and Revelation refer to Jesus as the Word of God, Logos in the Greek. Given the similarities between the two books, why are they so different? One possibility is that John, a Palestinian Jew living in Asia Minor, thought in Hebrew as he wrote in Greek. Stephen Thompson, an American scholar who has spent much of his career in England and Australia, demonstrates that Greek in the Book of Revelation is heavily influenced by Hebrew or Semitic thinking. So John's Hebrew background may account for much, if not all, of the poor grammar in Revelation. But if that is the case, why is the Greek of the Gospel of John so beautiful? I have suggested, as mentioned earlier, the author of the book of Revelation did not write from Ephesus or Samaria or any of the churches of Asia Minor, but from Patmos, an island some 45 million miles off the coast of Asia Minor. No one knows for sure why John was on Patmos, but most external tradition tells us that he was there as a prisoner. Perhaps Patmos was an ancient version of Alcatraz. If so, John was probably on his own when they came to composing the book. He wrote down the visions he received in his own words, grammatical flaws and all. If he had put an Ephesus, on the other hand, He could have had access to editorial help. Excuse me. The evidence indicates that Paul had a lot of secretarial help, people who would take things he told them and write them out. So perhaps the difference between the Gospel of John and the Book of Revelation is that John did not have access to editorial assistants when he's preparing the letter on Patmos. It would be fun to learn more about the persons who helped John shape his Gospel in the magnificent liberal piece that is about the information about the process is lost to history for now. With the evidence that is available to us, we will make the working assumption that the human author of Revelation is the same John that we learn so much about in the rest of the New Testament. The divine author of the book, of course, is Jesus. The date of Revelation. Did John prepare the book of Revelation early or later in his career? Do we have any idea as to the date of composition? Scholars generally hold two different opinions on the subject. The minority view is that the book reflects the time of the Emperor Nero, around after death 65. The majority view, supported by the bulk of non-biblical tradition, is that John wrote during the reign of Domitian, who resigned the Emperor of Rome from after AD 81 to AD 96. In the latter case, the date is usually thought to be around AD 95, as some evidence suggests that John left Patmos shortly after finishing the book. Scholars have considered both periods because of the indication that each of the two emperors persecuted Christians at some point. This ties with the theme of martyrdom that appears throughout the book of Revelation. The first organized Roman persecution of Christians seems to have been the brief episode after the burning of Rome in the time of Nero. Some think that Nero himself set the fire and blamed the Christians in order to deflect attention from his own actions. On the other hand, Irenaeus, a Christian writer who flourished after AD 155, was named Domitian as the emperor at the time of John's authorship of Revelation, as the two dates as more likely. I prefer a late date for the Book of Revelation, around AD 95, before Domitian's time. Rome as an empire did not oppose Christians, at least not as an inconsistent fashion. In the book of Acts, you will note that the time and again Roman authorities rescued Paul from his enemies. Acts 18:12-17, 20:23-38, 21:27-22, and 29, and 23:1 verse 10, and 23:12 and 35. So Rome was not hostile to Paul or the Jews in general. During the time described in Acts, Nero's actions were severe, seem more impulsive than systematic. It probably represents the isolated deeds of a mentally disturbed person. The hostility of the Roman state toward Christianity in the 2nd century AD, on the other hand, resulted from the practice of emperors' worship. One of the ways that the emperors of Rome kept people loyal was through a system of worship that actually regarded the emperor as a god. In many parts of the empire, people built temples in honor of the emperor, especially in the eastern territories. The emperors themselves did not seem all that interested in the idea at first. Obviously, they knew better, so they find little evidence for emperor worshipping during the 1st century, but when it does arise, it seems to have originated in Asia Minor. The practice may have begun during the reign of Domitian, although the evidence is mixed. If John didn't compose Revelation at this time, its theme of martyrdom reflects a period of transition when systematic persecution of Christians was beginning and the worst things were on the horizon. How solid is the non-biblical evidence trying the authorship of Revelation at the time of Domitian? Irenaeus, who wrote around AD 180, was a friend of Polycarp, who was martyred in AD 156. Polycarp was old enough at the time of his death that he would not have been a young adult in AD 1995. Irenaeus based his testimony regarding the authorship of the date of Revelation on a personal contact with Polycarp, who claimed to have known John personally. So while the external evidence is not conclusive, it points strongly to the direction of the late date of the Book of Revelation, one toward the end of the 1st century. There's 3 pages to go. The time is near. I believe, however, that we have the decisive biblical support for the idea that Revelation is written late in the first century. We find it when we compare certain texts in Revelation with Jesus' end-time sermon on the Mount of Olives as recorded in Mark 13. Note Mark 13:28 and 29. Now learn the lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near. Even so, when you see the things happening, you know what is near, right at the door. In Mark 13, a similar account appears in Matthew 25, 24, 32, and 35. Jesus was describing the future telling the disciples that would occur between the time when his mighty and spectacular second coming. They had asked Jesus questions about the destruction of the temple and the timing of his return. Matthew 24:3, Mark 13:4, and Luke 21:5 and 7. The disciples didn't want Jesus to delay long, but longed for him to come back as soon as possible, recognizing their expectation. He explained a series of signs would occur first: wars and rivers of wars, famines, earthquakes, heavenly phenomena, false prophets, and the gospel going to the world. Mark 13:5 verse 20. Only when these events had taken place would this becoming be near right at the door. What did Jesus have in mind here? That his return was not near at the time he was talking to his disciples. A number of things had to happen first. After all of them had taken place, then only would it be appropriate to say, in the words of Mark's account, it is near. Mark's account of Jesus' sermon continues in verse 33. Be on guard, be alert, you do not know when that time will come. What time the moment of Jesus' advent? You cannot know the time that Jesus will come, but you can know when it is near. Now notice the difference between the assertions of Mark 13:29-33 and the words of Revelation 22:10. Then he told me, do not seal up the words of prophecy of this book, because the time is near. As illustrated in English in the box on the previous page, Revelation 22 contains an exact verbal parallel to Mark 13 in Greek. But in Mark 13, Jesus said at the time would be imminent only for certain things had taken place. In other words, in AD 31, when Jesus spoke, the time was not near, but by the date John had finished the book of Revelation, things had changed. The time was now near. What the difference between the two statements, the contrast is all these things of Mark 13:29. The signs that they were taking place between Jesus spoke and the time when his coming would be near had been fulfilled by the time John composed the book of Revelation. To us today, the whole issue makes little sense. We have seen nearly 2,000 years ago, without the return of Jesus, many of us are still looking for Jesus' signs in the end of today's world. How then could John and other Christians perceive that all these things had been fulfilled in the first century? The key lies in the fact that Jesus blended two events in the end of time sermon of Mark 13: the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem in AD 70 and the end of the world. While much of his end time sermon applies particularly in the final regeneration of Earth's history by the time of the temple's destruction, Christian believers had plenty of evidence that the sign of Jesus spoke about what had already occurred. Let me share with you the little history of the first century. Did false messiahs arise in the first century? Simon the sorcerer wanted to be the messiah figure, and Acts mentions a couple more messiahs. The history of Josephus, who wrote around AD 1100, present even more examples of people who claimed to be messiah during the first century, particularly in the era just before the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Did wars and rumors of wars circulate during the first century? Very much so. While the Pax Romana peace denominated the empire at the time when Jesus spoke, a peace broke down widely in the 60s of the century, particularly in Palestine, when the Jews revolted against Rome. In the events of the Jewish War, so-called Josephus, we see much of the fulfillment of all these things that Jesus described. What about Jesus' prediction about famine? History describes a terrible famine in Palestine around AD 46. One of the Acts 11 appears to mention Jesus talks about pestilence, contagious disease. Luke 21:11. History tells us that in the time of Nero, people died in the bubonic plague, the Black Death, and Rome in one autumn season. Furthermore, Jesus predicts earthquakes. In AD 60, one leveled the city of Laodicea, another devastated Pompeii in AD 63, and one even struck in the city of Rome in AD. Earthquakes seem to have been a frequent occurrence in the Mediterranean area during the middle of the first century. As for the signs in the heavens, if you are familiar with the writings of Josephus, you are aware of the report that when the Roman army surrounded the city of Jerusalem, people saw tremendous apparitions in the sky, in addition to the other remarkable events when they interpreted as signs. Many regarded the phenomena as indicating that Jewish cause was failing and the city of Jerusalem was doomed. If you don't have any access to the writings of Josephus, then you can find some descriptions in the book of the Great Controversy. According to Jesus, his own disciples would experience persecution. When they also fulfilled in the first century, as I mentioned earlier, the Roman Empire as a whole was fairly neutral toward Christianity during the first century. But the accounts in the books of Acts indicate that the early Christians suffered a great deal from those around them, particularly in their relationship with the synagogues and the Sanhedrin. Persecution was sporadic rather than systematic, yet it played a major role in the first century Christian experience. False prophets would surface. New Testament books such as 1 and 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Colossians, 2 and 3 John, and Jude contain abundant evidence that many people within the early church raised ideas that conflicted those of Jesus and the apostles. Perhaps the most prominent of Jesus' signs of the end was his assertion that the gospel would go to the whole world before his return. While many have limited this prediction to the end of the world, the New Testament indicates that the apostles believed that it had some may be fulfilled in their day. In Colossians, Paul wrote, "This is the gospel you heard that being proclaimed to every creature under heaven, in which Paul had become a servant." Colossians 1 verse 23. Paul evidently had the impression the gospel had already been preached to the world. It was now revealed and made known through prophetic writings by the command of the eternal God, so that all nations might believe and obey him. Romans 16 verse 26. And finally, what about the Great Tribulation about Jesus talks about in Matthew, Mark 13 verse 19 and 20? Did it too have a fulfillment within the first century? Once again, Josephus describes the horrific experience of the Jews in Jerusalem about 40 years after Jesus' sermon. The suffering of one of the Jews around AD 70 was so powerful and so tragic, it set the tone for the suffering of the end of time. The preceding event shows how a first century Christian could conclude that the signs of the end had been fulfilled within the first generation. As John was familiar with the end time teaching of Jesus, and there is no question that he was, he seems to believe that by the time he wrote Revelation, he could describe the return of Jesus as imminent. And if he regarded the coming of Jesus as near, then he believed that the signs Jesus had said would precede his return, the greening of the leaves before summer, which in Matthew and Mark had already taken place. Here's the point of the whole exercise. If the author of Revelation can declare that the time is near in Revelation 1 and 3 and 22 verse 10, there is strong evidence that it does not oppose the book of Revelation at the time of Nero. The signs we have described above were just beginning to be filled in the 50s and early 60s of the first century. After the events surrounding the destruction of Jerusalem, first century Christians could easily have decided the signs of Jesus' return had met their fulfillment. This leads me to believe that the most likely of the two dates for the writing of Revelation is around AD 95, the very time recorded by second century Christian writers after the close of the New Testament canon. How could John describe the second advent as near than more than 1090 years ago in Revelation 1 verse 3? The return of Jesus was certainly not close in the chronological sense. It was, however, near in terms of God's desire to come and his desire for his people to be ready. Whether or not Jesus appeared in our lifetime, the healthiest stance to take place is near for us. Not only that, a thorough study of Revelation indicates that the term nearness is especially appropriate to the time in which we live today. As we study this glorious and perplexing book, it will lead us to follow in the instruction of Jesus in Luke 21:28. When we see all things there taking place, lift up your heads, for the redemption draws near. So that was my introduction, guys, to this book, of the new teaching, which is the deep things about God, which is an insider's guide to the book of Revelation, which is written by John Pauline. So this purpose of this book is to get a good insight on Revelation about the end of times and the second coming advent of Jesus Christ, who is Yeshua HaMashiach. So cheers, guys. Thank you for listening to my 30-minute video. Have a blessed evening and peace out and shalom to all.